Hello, all. Rick DiClemente with Astrology Unplugged. Welcome to my website, starself.com. This is usually a show in about the 155th week. Once a week, we do like an astrology magazine, but for the past 5 weeks and the next 5 weeks, I'm teaching an astrology beginning course straight through for about 10, 11, 12 weeks. We're on week number 5. So I'm going to give my disclaimer up there. And we're going to go approximately 10 weeks, 11, 12 weeks. Depends on what is needed. So there you see the website, starself.com, and the fact that we're on session 5 out of about 10. Now, we have spent the first 2 weeks talking about signs. The next 2 weeks about planets. Now, we're going to put the planets in the signs, and they're also going to be in the houses. So tonight we introduce houses. The document that you need to go get is out on my website. This is what the document looks like. I don't want you to be worried about the middle columns. The main thing is the first and last column. This is the definition of the houses, okay? And to get a hold of that document, it's in the same place as all the other documents are, which is, let's see here. Okay, so let me get it straight. So to get a hold of the document, go to the web and go to the bottom line, starself.com, all lowercase. It's always starself.com/class/ and then the name. So they're always that much the same. And all you need is houses.jpg. That will bring you the list that we're going to study here tonight. Okay? houses.jpg. I'll show that again later. Now, I want you to get the idea. Astrology is very, very complicated, but the basis of astrology is you got 10 planets. They are in one of the 12 signs. They are in one of the 12 houses. There are 4 things about it. You got the planets in the signs, they're in the houses, and they make aspects to each other. They're opposite each other, they're at a right angle to each other, they're in the 4th house. So this is where you're going to start to see a chart take shape. You're going to start to see why you are much different than just your sun sign. Okay? Tonight I have chosen for my own reasons, whether you like it or not, I'm going to start with Nancy Pelosi's charts. And I'm doing it for the reason that she has a bunch in Aries and a bunch in Taurus. I'm going to show you what that means. And then the second chart I'm going to show you is a person. Hello, Jan. The second person is a Pittsburgher. I'm showing you her just to show you, because she was born in Oslo, Norway, and to show you how different the houses look when you're in a higher or lower elevation. Okay? So tonight is to start to understand the complex difference between houses and signs. One is a wheel of signs, one is a wheel of houses. Okay? And they can be any different way. The houses are like a piece of plastic you put over top of the chart. And all houses for all people, now I got to realize this is my right hand, but it looks to you like my left hand. All houses for everybody, the first house is over here, which you would call on your clock 9 o'clock. All house systems, the setting or the 7th house or the 7th house is on your right. The left is the east. Don't get confused. The left side of a chart is the east. The right side is the west. Then you got the above or what's below. Astrology is based on the 12 houses, which are always a line pointing to the top, a line pointing to the bottom, a line pointing out the 2 sides. Now let's get started. Here is Pelosi's chart. Well, you done disappeared on me. There you go. Now, I am using a different system. Okay, there is a full chart. I'm using a different system that I never use this system because it's confusing. This is the British system. And in the British system, you see the signs of the zodiac. Do you understand that? Just like looking at the universe out there and looking at the astrological belt of all those constellations. These are always 30 degrees. Aries is always opposite Libra, is always next to Scorpio. These are the signs of the zodiac. Now, the houses are here. See these numbers? 1, first piece of pie. 2, second piece of pie. 3, third piece of pie. 4, fourth piece of pie. These are the houses. Everybody's houses are different sizes. I'll explain to you why in a minute. The first house is always here. It's just like a piece of plastic you put over top the chart. And the first house for everybody at all times is right here. It always starts right here. This is the start-finish line, 1 and 12. The first 2, 3, all the way, 9, 10, 11, 12. So this line right here is what's called the rising sign. And when you were born, when Nancy was born, if somebody looked in the sky, the sun was overhead. This is the horizon. This is the east. This is the west. This is the what's called the midheaven. The midheaven is what's above you. So sure enough, she's born at 12 o'clock. She's actually born at 12 noon. Now, you know what? We're gonna go with this as if it's true. This is not an accurate reading. This is somebody we don't have a birth time, so we're going to just choose noon for her. And for tonight's purposes, we're going to act as if she was noon. Now, a noon chart, when you don't have a birth time, you use noon for the birth time because somehow, mystically, noon represents the whole day. So 95% of my charts have the real birth time. The other ones I use noon. So I didn't notice that earlier, but for now I'm going to use it. Let's just act as if she were born at noon. And I can tell you by looking at this, it really makes sense. This does apply to her. All right. Now, here's what I want you to watch. All right. If she were born in the morning, I want you to watch as I turn the wheel, the sun is going to stay matched up with Aries. As I turn the wheel over here or over here, the sun is still going to stay matched up with Aries. Because during that month, the sun is spending 30 days to go through the sign of Aries. The moon is going quickly, 2.5 days per sign. Pluto, many, many years to go through a sign. So she was born when Pluto just entered Leo. Pluto at 0, Leo, 40 minutes. All that means is each degree is made up of 60 minutes. So to get a further definition of where her Pluto was, she was born right when Pluto went into Leo, 40 minutes out of 60 minutes. Now, if she were born in the morning, watch me now. Now, this is one reason I don't like using these charts. If she were born in the morning, okay, did you notice I went below sunrise? Okay, here's the sun starting to rise. This is the horizon. Sun's still in Aries. An hour later, oh, the sun has just risen. It's risen over this line. Then through the morning, it travels backward. Through the mid-morning and through noon, she's born around 11, 12. The sun is at the top of the chart. All people everywhere that are born around 11, 11:30, 12, everybody, everywhere has the sun at the top of the chart. Anybody born near sunrise the sun is back here. Sunrise, noon, sunset, midnight. These are very important. These are called the four angles of a chart, and they're really critically important.
We couldn't see the changes that you were making.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it just stayed as the regular
Okay, I'm
chart.
glad you pointed it down now. Okay.
Somebody did.
It's not moving, so I'll share it with you. I'm glad you told me. All right. Here she is. Here she is if she was born about sunrise. Okay. Early in the morning, 8 o'clock, the sun would be here. Sun in Aries would be here at 11 o'clock. Around noon, the sun is at the top. So even though mine is happening dynamically, you are not seeing it. So let me go. I got to repaint the screen. Here she is back at her birth time around noon. The sun is at the top. Now, in the afternoon, the sun goes through the afternoon and it sets here. The sun rises here, the sun sets there. The earth is in the middle. That's why this wheel seems to be rotating. This whole wheel turns one time per day because the earth is in the middle, spinning once per day. You understand? All right. So at sunset, I'll move her down there. Okay, sun is setting. I'll repaint your screen. Here's sunset on the same day. Sun is still in Aries. The position, the planets are pretty much staying in relative position to the zodiac, but not through the houses. The planets are moving backwards through the houses because everybody's chart, first house is over here, fourth house is here, seventh house is here, 10th house is there. Everybody's just their different sizes. Okay? If you were born about midnight of that night, let me reshape it. If you're born about midnight, here's the fourth house. The fourth house points to right to the, this is the darkest part of the night. So the sun is well hidden. If she were born at midnight, up in the sky, you could see the moon. You couldn't see Neptune or Pluto or Chiron because they're too far away. Now watch this. I'm going to go back to her birth time. All right, I'm going to repaint the screen for you. You'll get the hang of this. When she was born, the sun was next to Jupiter, and Jupiter's really, really bright in the morning, but you probably couldn't see Jupiter when it's this close. It's too bright. You've seen mornings where you see the sun and you can see Venus. You probably couldn't even see Venus or Mars because it was just too bright. But if we would have blotted out the sun, actually that morning, you would have been able to see Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn, Venus, and Mars. Okay, now, so the sun goes through the zodiac. It goes through the zodiac while the whole thing's turning. So in one morning, it might be at 1 degree of Aries. A whole day later, it comes back to the bottom, but it's at 2 degrees Aries. The sun has moved through the zodiac, but now it's at 2. But in the next day, it's similar. You are more like a person who is born a day after you, near your birth time, than you are two people born together separated by 40 minutes. Because your planets fall in the same houses. Okay, now, a planet, we've told you what they are, they're energies. The sign they're in tells us what type of energy. You're driving a Chevy, you're driving a Ford. The houses tell us, where are you taking this energy? Where does this energy get expressed in your life? And that's my opinion. I've done a lot of work on the houses through the years. I'm going to show you a basic interpretation of the houses. It's my opinion that the houses are very ill-defined, and I think they really need to be updated. I'm going to give you the traditional meaning of the houses. I'm going to give you my meaning. Okay? So, planet is energy. Planet in the sign is what type of energy? What do you do with it? Where does it get expressed? Okay? Now, did you understand how the planets during the day, throughout the day, the planets stay in the same part of the zodiac, but go through different houses? What that means is this. If it's around Barbara's birthday and it's October, I'm taking a line and I'm drawing a line through the sun into Libra. Okay? She's a Libra. And during those 30 days, the sun has to go through Libra. But am I looking at it like this? Am I looking at it like this? Am I looking at it like this? Am I looking at it from the back of my head? 4 different meanings. That's what the houses are. Okay? How am I addressing that planet? Is that my left ear? Is that my right ear? Is it in front of me? They mean something different. So let's go show you what's interesting about Miss Pelosi here. Okay. The correct way to say this in astrology is her sun is in the sign of Aries in the 10th house. You'll notice that these houses get a little bit crooked, and that's because of the tilt of the earth. These houses are all equal, but they don't look equal. It takes a planet the same time to go through this skinny house as it does to go through this big house. Okay? Now let me show you my friend born in Oslo. Okay? And you're going to be surprised that this is how it works. This is her chart as if you're born near the Arctic Circle. Now look, the planets take the same time to go through this large first house as they do through this skinny house. It's because the Earth is so tilted. That's all you need to know. The computer does the houses for you. The houses are a system. But notice how what's above this person is right here. This point is above them. Looks like it's up here, but this is the north point. It's very cattywampus because of the Oslo birth. As you come closer to the equator, then the houses end up being more equal. Now, everybody's first house means basically the same. Everybody's third house means basically the same. But each of you can have any one of the 12 signs on the cusp of the third house. I might have a Scorpio third house. You might have a Gemini third house. Somebody else may have a Scorpio third house. This is where the chart gets more complicated. And those 4 angles I taught you about are one big deal. Okay. The chart is based just like a kite with the 2 strips of wood. I cannot tell you how important those 4 angles are. This comes from the birth time, and the birth time is critical. Okay, here you see the 4 lines. What is to your left is your rising sign. That has a lot to do with the self, me. The first house is similar to the qualities of the first sign, Aries. The 7th house is similar in qualities to the 7th sign of Libra. So the first house is about me. The 7th house is about me plus you. Me getting married. Me and my girlfriend. Me and my divorce. Me and the public. So the first house for everybody has to do with self and self plus other in the 7th house. This is why these 4 lines are so critical, the 4 angles, the ascendant, the descendant. You must learn these 4 words. The ascendant, the descendant. On top is the midheaven, MID heaven. On top is what calls you out into the world. It's usually a calling towards God or a calling towards a career. It's what calls you. At the bottom is the nadir. Nadir means bottom, Nadir. That's where you're coming from. That's where you're going to. It's where I'm coming from, where my family was. This is where I'm heading to. This is my background, my lineage, my property, my family, my grandmother, my job, my career. Where am I going? Those 4 lines are the critical part of the chart. Who am I? Who am I with you? Where am I coming from? Where am I going to? That's really critical. Now, what's funny about her chart is I didn't realize it was a chart without a true birth time, but it ends up being so accurate anyway that it's really pretty amazing. Okay. I also want to give you a warning. When you read for people, 95% of the people in the world were born at 6 a.m. Okay? Don't listen to them. Everybody tells you you're born 6 a.m., 6:30. Don't listen to anybody's story about their birth time, whether their mom told them, sort of, okay. If their mom told them for sure, good. If it's written in their Bible, good. If it's written on their birth certificate, better. If it's written in the family records, good. But if they give you this stuff like, oh, I feel like it's this, and it could be this and it could be that, don't listen to them. If they try to tell you, I've swung a pendulum, and the pendulum tells me it's Virgo rising, throw the pendulum away. Don't listen to the birth time is really correct. And if you get the birth time wrong, your predictions can be off by something like 360 years, which you don't want. So you can see that in Miss Pelosi, okay, she has the sun up in the 10th house. Let me tell you exactly how it goes. The sun is in Aries in the 10th. Her next planet is Mercury, the moon. The moon is in Scorpio. It's in the 5th house. Mercury is in Pisces in the 9th house. Venus and Mars are both in Taurus. They're both in this big piece of pie, which is called the 11th house. Jupiter is next to our sun in Aries in the 10th house also. Saturn is also in Taurus in the 10th house. Uranus is up next to Venus and Mars. She's got a powerhouse of a political chart. Uranus is in the 11th house. Neptune is in Virgo, down in the third house. Pluto finally is in the 1st house. This is what you call a planet that is rising, because planets rising to the ascendant, just like the sun is rising. Planets in the 1st house are very, very powerful. Okay? She has about 10, 20 indicators of why she's so placed the way she is, why she's in the right position for her. Well, you like her or not, I don't care. This is just astrological. So, any planet in the 1st house is really a big deal. Any planet that's there, you draw it 2-3 times bigger. It just becomes stronger, the impact of the planet. When a planet is in a house, it is much stronger in the house when it's at the beginning of the house. Well, any planet around here is much stronger than a planet about here. And as the planet gets about here, it's still in the 1st house, but it's starting to affect the 2nd house. So in house systems, there are cusps. In planets, they're not. There's signs, they're not. So if I got a planet right here, it's lately in the 6th house, but it's starting to affect the 7th house. you can actually have a planet that is affecting the 6th and the 7th. Okay? These placements are very important. We're going to get to the point next week or so. I'm not going to use this wheel anymore. I'm going to use a wheel where none of these zodiacal diagrams are here. You'll just see the houses. You won't see the zodiac. But I wanted you to see the difference this week of what a sign is, what a sign is, and what a house is. Okay? Now let's talk about the houses. On this diagram, it's not the greatest, but it'll give you a good idea. All right. The first house for everybody, it's an angular house. The 4th house is angular, 7th house is angular, the 10th house is angular. That's the beginning of a new quadrant. The first house is the ascendant. That's your projected behavior, your temperament, your health, how you react to those around you, and your appearance. This is a very good definition of the first house. The first house is very hard to talk about because it's so much you. Now, I may have a person that looks like a goat. I mean, a goat shape to their face. And I don't care what sign there is, that means their Saturn is near that first house. Or Capricorn is on the first house, because that's where you're getting the goat look, the goat shape. Oh, you're getting your birth time at 2:30 p.m.? Well, let's go ahead and change it then. By all means, let's go ahead and look at her chart with the correct birth time. Thank you for looking that up. I don't know how I missed that. So let's take Pelosi. Her chart's going to change completely because her sun's going to go into the 8th house. 2:30 p.m. Okay, and we will mark this as from the birth record, and we will save this under politics. Okay, now do you see what happened to her? Her sun's over here. Okay, now we get her true rising sign, Leo's rising. So in astrology, the 3 main things about you are your sun sign, your moon sign, and your rising sign. The rising sign is the same as the ascendant. It's the same thing. So we see that if she was born at noon, the sun in Aries would be up here. But she's born in the afternoon, that we find out, 2:30. So she's born between noon and sunset. Okay? So what that does, that gives her a Scorpio midheaven. Gives her a Taurus midheaven. That gives her Leo rising. And it puts her moon very strong in Scorpio. You do not budge this woman. You cannot budge this woman. It's not because she's an Aries. It's because she got that powerful moon in Scorpio. She got Leo rising. All 4 of her angles are fixed. Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, Aquarius. They're all fixed. She's got 4 planets in Taurus. You do not budge this woman. Now, another thing that's interesting about her, did you notice a typical Aries is more like Jennifer Garner? They're outgoing and they got a shiny light. She doesn't come across that way. She comes out like rigid, kind of serious. You don't get her loosening up. And that's because of the Scorpio moon and the other qualities in the chart that make her much, much more serious. But if you're going to mess with an Aries with a moon in Scorpio, you better be prepared. Now, the first house for everybody. Let's talk about what it says in there. The first house, the actual beginning of the first house, is the point in the chart where life enters your body. critical start point. The sign that's on the first house, or what sign is rising, often indicates the body type that you have, which I'll get to later. The sign on the first house also speaks of how you see the world and how the world sees you. The first house and the ascendant are often seen as a window. How you look at the world, how the world looks at you. This is one of the main reasons why you look at somebody and they look real serious, you get to know them and they're real light. Or somebody looks real light, you get to know them and they're real serious. It's because their sun sign doesn't match their rising sign. That's why. But first house is hard to talk about because it's so much you. But it's a lot to do with what your energy is like. If you have like Mars rising and Mars is real close, you're going to be very Aries-like because Mars rules Aries. If you have Jupiter there, I don't care what your sun sign is, you're going to be very Jovian or very Sagittarian because Jupiter rules Sag. So a planet placed there or just above, you are very much so. I have the sun in my chart. My sun is, here's the ascendant. My sun is a couple of degrees above. So that's where I get the sun expressive qualities of Leo. The second house. Now we're going to go around these several times. Oh, by the way, don't be concerned whatsoever if you've got 5 planets in the 10th house and nothing in your 7th. That doesn't mean you won't get married. If you have a house that's blank, it means nothing. Okay. You look to the ruler of the house to find out more information about the house. Now, don't be concerned if your houses look empty. The second house. Your material side, security, gains, losses, financial conditions, and your concern about these matters. Okay, can you see that they're getting those qualities from the second house of the zodiac, which is Taurus? So the third house is going to be Gemini-like. The fourth house is going to be Cancer-like, even though there's a different sign there. All 6 houses for everybody have a Virgo nature. 6 houses just very Virgoan. 7th house is Libran. 8th house is Scorpionic. Okay? And then you blend in there what sign is really there. So here's the difference with the second house. The first house, they talk about it being so much like you, and the 7th house being my marriage. What really the first house is really about you, what you're like. The 7th house is about what we're like, me and you, what we are like. The second house, this is why this chapter in my book on the 6 polarities is so important. You need to understand 2 and 8, 3 and 9, 4 and 10, very important. The second house is about your self-worth. They talk about your money, the stuff you have. The 8th house, they talk about other people's money, other people that you owe money to. The second house is really more aptly put about your self-worth, and the 8th house is about what is my self-worth like when I'm with you. Now we'll go to the third house. The third house on our list, by the way, every 3 houses they change names. The first house of each quadrant is angular. The second house is succedent. The third house is cadent. Then they keep repeating. There's an angular house followed by a succedent house, and that's spelled correctly, followed by a cadent house. So the third house for everybody is going to be very Gemini-like. It's got to do with your brothers and sisters, your mental aptitudes, your early childhood, everyday communication, your siblings, your early education. What I find with the third house, it's about the computer up here. What is the mind like? How does your mind work? How do you communicate? What do you like doing? Now, the third house is like local newsletters that you write for. Ninth house, opposite, is international magazines, international broadcasts, small scale, big scale. So we keep seeing that whole repetition of the original zodiac, the me half and the we half. Okay? First house, a lot like me. Second house, about my stuff, especially my self worth. Third house, my brain, my thoughts. When I see people having planets going through their third house, I see that they're changing the way they're thinking. And if I look at the planet that's going through, I can see what they're trying to change towards. If Saturn's going through, they're trying to become more constructive with their mind, less messy. If Uranus is going through, they're doing the opposite. They're getting wild with their mind. They're starting to entertain all kind of new scientific far out stuff. Okay, so the third house, this is where astrologers get a lot of their predictions, is by watching the planets go through the houses. All in all, in my opinion, after 42 years, I don't think the houses are as important as the books say, and I don't think the aspects are either. They're still very important, but when you read these books, it makes it seem like they're cut in stone. So use a grain of salt when you're reading about your houses and when you're reading about your aspects. That other book I told you about to pick up, it's going to start telling you about these houses and aspects. And you want to read about them and get enlightened by them. But keep in mind that using a grain of salt is always a real good idea. Now, the fourth house is a real big deal. Why? Because the fourth house is the bottom of the chart. It's opposite the 10th house. The four angles are 1, 4, 7, 10. Me, my partner, where am I coming from? Where am I going to? Okay? So the fourth house is really critical. Cardinal house, succeeding house, cadent house, back to cardinal. Well, we see that her moon is very powerful because it's pretty close to the nadir. It's 5 degrees from the nadir, and it's 17. It's only 3 degrees from squaring her ascendant. So a planet that is close to squaring the ascendant is extremely powerful, which means that she is very lunar. And when you're very lunar, that means you're very Cancerian. So she's Aries. She's also very Cancerian. She's very Scorpionic. And look at that moon opposite Uranus. Look at Venus. Venus is exactly square to the ascendant. So that's a social planet with a lot of charm, Venus and Mars. So when your fourth house is involved, what the books say about your fourth house is that as domestic affairs and the conditions, the nurturing parent, the home, the family, the end of life, all those things can come into play. To me, when I see the fourth house, these are things you want to keep close to home. For instance, Kobuchar, she has all her planets down at the fourth house. There ain't no way that this woman's born at the time it says. Because when your planets are all at the fourth house, you want to stay home and hide. The 10th house is where you go out to the public. She's got them all at the fourth. But what did I do? I switched her AM for PM because there's a mistake. Whoop, everything went up on top. Now we got a Democratic presidential candidate. She's a firehouse. She's in public. She's out there speaking. But you don't speak when your stuff's at the bottom of the chart. You just don't. You're too scared. You're worried about your safety. So I'm pretty much guaranteed, which I do with some people now and then. I switch the AM for PM and see if it makes more sense. And in her case, it's black and white sense. So I really think somebody got her AM PM written down wrong. My opinion. Now, when you got planets in the fourth house, you got to remember a difference between natal planets in the fourth house and transiting planets going through. Natal planets in the fourth house are indications of you want to be home, you want to be near mama, you want to be on the ranch, you don't want to stray from the property, you're tied to your lineage, you're tied to your traditions. That's why you can have an Aquarius who's the most worldly, let's just go experiment and go through Africa. You put all those planets in the fourth house, they don't want to go anywhere. They want to stay near home. See, your sun sign will lie to you all the time because it's just part of the story. You can see already how it's the permutations are becoming unbelievable by having planets in houses, in signs, with aspects to them. So that's why charts read as individualistic as they do. So anyhow, the fourth house is very about family, keeping the family together, finding your safety in the family, very Cancerian place. And she's got the moon there. The moon is the ruler of Cancer. So we know that Miss Pelosi is a very emotional woman. She's tough, but you don't want to mess with this woman emotionally and survive. She's just really, really strong. On the other hand, McConnell is a Pisces. He's got 4 planets in Taurus. So that's the one thing I found out about politicians. That's the number one thing they need. They need a strong Jupiter, which means they're interested in broadening their mind, but they need Taurus planets to put up with all the stuff. And a lot of politicians have just that. Now let's go to the 5th house. The 5th house, you'll notice, is the second house of that quadrant. It is a succedent house. It follows forth from the 4th house. It picks up the qualities like the 5th sign of Leo, even though on the cusp is the sign of Sagittarius. She has Sagittarius ruling her 5th house, and all 5th house have the following natures. The 5th house is about children, love affairs, procreation, your children, creative expression, luck, and speculation. Houses have many different sides to them. When a lot of activity is going on in your 5th house, there can be a lot of things happening with your kids. Why? Because the 5th house has to do with I express myself. Let's go backward. 4th house, I'm here at home, I'm safe. Opposite, 10th house, we're here at work, we're safe. Me and my home, me and my career. 5th house, me and my creation. 11th house, us and our creation. This is all covered in the basics over and over in the exquisite zodiac. So the 5th house has a lot to do with being creative. You want to express yourself, whether it's singing or playing guitar or whatever kind of on the radio that you do. People with a lot of 5th house, they got to get it out of their system. But they're very proud of what they are doing. That's not at all Aquarian. The Aquarius rules the 11th house. Aquarius is about what we are doing. Look at where we're expressing ourselves. Very important dichotomy. Okay, that's why you'll see somebody who may be kind of quiet, like a Pisces, Sun and Moon in the 5th house. They can't stop writing music. They can't stop singing songs. The 5th house wants to express itself. 6th house, the cadent house, before the next angle. The 6th house is a Virgoan house for everybody. It's got to do with self-service. It's got to do with perfecting yourself. It's got to do with your health. Let's read about what the sixth house says. Now, don't take this little document I gave you too much to heart. You can go on the web and you can read documents after documents. Tell me about the third house. What you want to do is listen for what's in common through all the descriptions. Hello, Susan. Haven't seen you in a while. Sixth house. You'll see a Virgo. See the word Virgo? It's natural sign. It's Virgo-like. The work environment, the employer, employees, the routines, health issues, hygiene. Very, very important. Transits through this house, you'll see things happen to your health. A lot of difficulty in this house. You'll see difficulties in the body of the natal chart. For instance, if you see the moon troubled in a person's sixth house, the moon is the breast, it's also the stomach. Well, that person is prone, doesn't mean they will, but that person is prone to stomach problems more than other people, just because the moon is in the sixth house. If the Mercury is in the sixth house, that person is prone to mental blockages, whether that's psychological or whether that's actually in the brain. So the houses, don't worry about it in 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You will be learning about the houses for years. Just start building. You might even want a notebook with 12 sections that you just keep writing down your perceptions. The houses will grow and grow with you. You'll learn a lot by looking at your friend's chart, see what's happening in their sixth house, what's happening in your sixth house. Some people, planets go by and their health goes tilt. Other people, planets go by and their health gets better. The sixth house, there are good definitions for cadence, succeeding, and the third cardinal. Cardinal houses, right? Cardinal are the first, fourth, the seventh, and the 10th. Those are the starter uppers. They're similar to cardinal signs, generators. Okay, now remember Charles' story of Cinderella. The sixth house has a lot to do with getting ready for the world. That even though this is the house system, the houses take upon what the exquisite zodiac taught us. The first 6 houses are basically self-oriented. The last 6 houses are basically other-oriented. And you can see she's got 8 planets that are other-oriented. Here she is as a major figure in the Congress in the United States. The 7th house, for many, many years, has been the house where you always look for relationships, marriage, divorce, partnership. There's no doubt that that's true, but what I have learned in the past 10 years or so, when I see a lot of activity here, planets coming up through here, the person is obsessed with changing their role, their public role. Now remember, the first house is me, the 7th house is us. How am I going to be by myself? How am I going to be with my reflection off of you? And that's because it has a Libra connotation, because Libra is the 7th house. So I'm sorry, Libra is the 7th sign of the zodiac. Okay, now we can automatically see things are going to get intense in the 8th house because it's a higher octave of the 7th. If the 2nd has to do with my money and my values, then the 8th house has to do with our money, your money, my money. We share money, we share resources. Excuse me. When I see a lot of planets in the 8th house, it can mean big business. It can mean psychologist. It's going to pick up a scorpionic trait. All eighth houses have a scorpionic tint to them. Being a coal miner, digging into things, digging into psychology, digging into research, working with big, powerful companies, Citibank, big, powerful monoliths, the IRS. The eighth house is no place to mess with. If I'm doctoring you, working with you, and Saturn's coming through your seventh house, and you're telling me that you're playing funny money with your money, I'm telling you, stop playing funny money with your money, because when Saturn gets to your eighth house, the IRS could come to visit you. So you see how I'm saying that a planet in the house represents the field in life. So eighth house activity can spur up your bank. Your ex-partner might sue you. The IRS might audit you. This is no place to mess around. The eighth house is also the house of the occult. Deep, dark stuff. See the eighth house as all painted black. It's a very deep, dark place, and that's because it's ruled by Pluto. Not her eighth house, but the eighth house is ruled by Pluto. Her eighth house is ruled by Neptune, is on the cusp. See, it's overlapping the cusp. Her eighth house is ruled by Neptune, Pisces. Ninth house. Now it's a cadent house. This is the quadrant of relationships. My relationships, they get thicker in Scorpio. I told you about Gemini being my mind, local magazines, local errands, Sagittarius, long trips, going away to school, writing articles that go around the world. The ninth house is all about your education. Let's read about what it says there. We didn't miss these things. That's okay. We can catch up here. The seventh house, it says marriage, partner, business partners, contracts, joint endeavors. That's the truth. The eighth house, you'll get the deeper quality. Attitude towards life and death, possessions of others, wills and legacies, sex and regeneration. The ninth house, religion. Ninth house is the biggest. Religion, philosophy, publishing, higher learning, distant travel, foreign countries. So you're starting to see how everything is based on these oppositions. Myself, us. Second house. My stuff, our stuff. Third house. My mind, our mind. Fourth house. My position in the family. 10th house. My position in the world. Fifth house. My creative expression. 11th house. Our creative expression. So you're starting to see what these things are about. Now, when planets go into the ninth house, oftentimes a person goes away to college. When I see difficulty in the ninth house in the natal chart, oftentimes the person can't get any money to go to school, or one of these parents that says, you're a girl, you're not going to college. You'll see trouble in the ninth house. Or you might see tremendous activity in the ninth house, and the person's going for their fourth master's degree. So a natal chart, a natal planet that's in a house energizes that house, and that house takes upon its nature. And remember what I said. Planets at the beginning of a house are much stronger in that house than they are at the end of the house. They get weaker. A planet is strong here, it gets weaker as it gets into the latter part of the house. Now, in the quadrants, the angles 1, 2, 3, 4. These are big, big, big critical deals. The 4 angles are major. When a planet is near that angle, when a planet is near this angle, like this moon, when a planet is near this angle, which she doesn't have, when a planet is near this angle, which she does 7 degrees away, so it's kind of far away, but it's still there. Their personality really picks up these qualities. So Miss Pelosi, her most angular planet is the moon. So we know that she's very, very lunar, and she's very Cancerian, and she's an Aries. And frankly, this is exactly why she is well endowed. That's where it comes from. Well endowed women come from lunar aspects, from the moon being big deal. Small breasted people, Geminis and Virgos, almost always. It's just the nature of the sign. Geminis and Virgos. You put their planets, you amplify that moon in their chart, and they'll no longer be small breasted. But that's where this comes from. We are going to learn about the body. Now, when you cross into the 10th house, the 10th house is really, really critical. It's the top of the chart. It's the Capricorn house. Keep in mind now, all those houses are different in size because what a house is a mathematical trigonometric way of dividing time and space up to appear and behave equally. Whew, that was a mouthful. A house is a mathematical or trigonometric way to divide up the pieces of pie so that you get a sense that the planet spends the same amount of time in each house, or it's got the same amount of distance. And it's argued over by all the great mathematicians and scientists. That's why we have about 10, 12, 15 types of houses, and us astrologers all argue about them. Let me show you what I mean. Doing her chart, right here are the house systems. These are the house systems. I gotta get it on your screen. Okay, when I do her chart, I pick Placidus. Placidus was I can't remember if it's Roman or Greek, famous mathematician. Most astrologers use the Placidus system, and the Placidus system divides that circle up by time and space. That's what tells us where the third house is, where the fourth house is, where the fifth house is, etc. Other people use equal houses where they're all equal. Other ones that are popular are the Koch and the Regiomontanus are pretty popular. Some people use Porphyry. Now, I'm not going to get into a big argument about these because it gets very complicated. I just wanted you to be aware of what's going on. So somebody watched the planets go through the signs, but when they saw the tilt of the Earth, they realized that the houses got involved, and they realized what was rising was causing things to happen. Rising, what was setting was causing things to happen. What was above was causing things to happen as below. Well, where do you get your other 8 house cusps? You got 4 of them, where you get the other 8. That's what the house systems were devised to do. And all these mathematicians rubbed their chin and argued with their trigonometry and their calculus, and they stick their nose in the air. And many, many astrologers use different ones. I have found 2, 3, 4 different types. They all work. I think what they do is they tell you something different. Let me give you an example. In Miss Pelosi, if I were using the Koch system, instead of the top of her chart being 1225, it might be 1240. Instead of the beginning of her 12th house being 21 degrees 0 minutes, it might be 2230, a little bit off. So what does the astrologer do? He goes back through her history and watches planets hit these houses. You know, when a planet's in one house, it's got one flavor. When it enters a different house, the flavor starts changing. So by retrofitting, you can start to see the accuracy of the natal house. I will definitely start you off with Placidus. When you go to these sites like astro.com and they're offering you what house system to use Placidus and just stick with it, even though you don't know what you're doing yet. All right. The 10th house, as I told you, what's below me, what's calling me, where have I been, where's my past been, what's calling me. Usually the 10th house is a misunderstanding. Usually the 10th house for everybody is their business. But business is not what's calling you. There's only one thing that calls you, and that's God. Say what you want. I'm getting older and I don't care. I just say God when I want to say it. And you can say whatever you want, whatever word. I'm reading a book now. Guess what she calls him? She calls him the big dude. I'm reading A Course in Miracles. I'm having a hard time with that. She's calling whatever the dude wants. Okay. That's actually a good book. I thought that would wake Susan up. All right. All right. Now, in Nancy's chart, the 10th house is really critical. Now, here's how you do astrology. The sign Taurus is on the midheaven. On the midheaven. The sign of Taurus is ruled by Venus. Venus is in the 10th house. Venus is in Taurus. So her Venus in Taurus is extremely, unbelievably strong, ruling her midheaven, opposite her moon, all squaring the ascendant, which means give her the gavel and you're not going to shut her up. You're not going to throw this woman curveballs easily. She kind of looks like that Aries part of her. Oh, she'd be an easy pushover. As we found out. So, the 10th house is your calling. In down-to-earth astrology, it's your career and stuff. All right. Now I'm going to explain to you the difference between the 10th house and the 11th house. Let's take a look here. Here's your 11th house for everybody. Different signs. Here's the 10th, 11th, 12th. All right. 10th is usually above you. Usually that line is over here or is over here. It doesn't usually get tilted like the one you saw in Norway. Here's the difference between the 10th and the 11th house. Okay. A doctor puts out a shingle and he starts making money. She starts making money. She starts building up clientele. After a while, gets a little old, and the doctor is rusty and getting bored and wants to work at a higher level. That's the 11th house. That's when he goes and joins the AMA. That's when he starts writing articles in the media. He wants to start affecting medicine from a higher dimension than just dealing with the client. Okay? So the succeeding houses, which is the second in each group, are all higher dimensions of the cardinal. The first house, the second house is the higher dimension of that. The fourth house, the fifth house is a higher dimension of it. The seventh, the eighth, we clearly see. The Scorpio house is a higher dimension of the Libra. And in this zodiac, we see that the Aquarius, 11, is a higher dimension of the Capricorn. Now, the 11th is very, very misunderstood, very understated. Let's talk about what this says about the 11th. It is friends, clubs, organizations, associations, goals, hopes, and wishes. Well, I have found out to be very glib. And what I've learned in the past 10 years is it's about hopes and wishes. I mean, it's big. And for all those years, 30 years, I thought it was, oh, your hopes and wishes, blow out the candle. No, this is what your fevers are about. It's a big deal. When planets go through the 11th house, people leave their jobs. They go to a higher higher calling. They want to join their friends. They'll quit their jobs and go traveling with their friends. But you're into a higher dimension because you're starting to, you just come out of the 10th house, which is your career peak. And in the 11th house, you're starting to think, how does this align with what I really hope and wish for this world? Yeah, hopes and wishes are about Cancer. See, and Aries is not obsessed about children. That's the Elizabeth Warren. What she talk about, babies, rights, children, family. That's the Cancer just pumping out of her. But yes, you're seeing it real strong with the Aries Pelosi. And again, I must mention here, Aries being the infant of the zodiac, Aries people in general, they do love babies. They love babies. Now they get a little tired of them when they get a little older. They just love infants. And I think that's archetypal because they're the first sign. I'm going to get through the zodiac so I can go around it again. And next week, what we're going to do, babies are exhausting. Yeah, yeah, especially baby pets. Okay, the 12th house. This is without a doubt um, the most misunderstood, tragic house of all. It's got a very bad reputation. In all of astrology, the 12th house is the spittoon. It is the place that gets a bad rap, and I'm going to tell you why. It took me a long time to figure it out. All right, 12th house. They're being kind of kind here. The subconscious mind, hidden resources, hidden problems, social responsibility, jails, prisons, self undoing. The biggest thing through history, the 12th house is known for self undoing, alcoholism, being thrown in jail. Those old places where teenagers have babies and they hide them out in the woods, these little secret places till they have mental institutions. Thank you. If you're wondering where this is coming from, YouTubers, we are able to send chat messages to each other, and I'm seeing words coming from various folks, and that's where some of these suggestions come from. Here's the problem with the 12th house. First of all, I think it's totally misunderstood. It's the biggest misunderstanding. Here you are in the first house, and you got a self, and you move. Let's do it this way. Figure this out. This is much like the basis of this exquisite zodiac. Here you've got a self. You go get some money, you get some value, you plant some stuff, you get a mind, you're out there talking to people, brothers and sisters, you're traveling around, you get a family, you build a family nest. It's really strong and solid and supportive. Then you have these kids, and the kids start battling, and everybody's having fun, right? And you all get ready for school, and you all get neatened up, and you all get ready to meet the public. You start to attain skills. I mean, the soul is really moving along. Then you move up here and you start to go to the ball, you go to the dance, you meet people, you go in your social circles, you go up here, it gets intense, you fall in love, you have babies, you have children, you have grandchildren. It's getting really intense and strong now. You go here, you go to university, you travel the world, you go all over, exchange students, you get to the head of the table, you get your gold nameplate, your gold watch, you're the head of the corporation, you made it on top. Here you go, and you go to join all the big clubs and organizations, right? And everything's going good, and then all of a sudden it all falls apart. It just all goes, pfft. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. It's an embarrassment to me that astrology keeps talking about that because I think it's really a misunderstanding and it needs to be fixed. Here's what's going on. If you'll remember back to my original talks about the 12 signs, when you go through 11 signs, the ego cannot be carried anymore. You cannot get into the 12th house with the ego. A rich man has more, what is it? A rich man has less ability to get through the eye of a needle than a camel. Okay? What that means is, as I told you in the exquisite zodiac, the difference between the 11th sign and the 12th sign is you got to dump the ego. The self can go no further. Because now you're talking about returning. You're returning back to the universe of where there's one mind and one heart. And that's why it's the house of your undoing if you keep up your stuff. Now, I questioned a woman once. The reason I questioned her, she had 5 planets. I got my son in the 12th house. This woman had 5 planets in the 12th house. She was glorious, healthy, beautiful, beautiful energy. So I'm going, wow, where'd this come from? In the old days, she suffered greatly. I'm not going to get into what happened to her, but she had a lot of really big problems in her life because she tried to stay ego bound. Then something happened to her 20 years ago. She gave up her ego and she surrendered. So if you walk into the 12th house and surrender what the planets represent, you'll do just fine. So a planet in the 12th house is going to be your trouble unless you give it to God. If Mars is there, you better let God decide your actions. If Mercury is there, you better quit thinking on your own and start looking to what God's intuition is sending you. So the 12th house needs to be spiritualized, or else you're not going anywhere and you might go to prison or you might go in the hospital. The reason why is not because you're being punished, but because you have taken yourself off track. That's what it means. So, she's got Pluto in the 12th house. This means, let me explain something else to you that comes out of nowhere, but it is true. In astrology, there's a lot to learn. The 7th house are enemies that you know you've got. The 12th house are enemies that you don't know who they are. I'll repeat myself. This is really valid. When planets go through here, it's symbolic of an enemy working against you, and you're very well aware of who they are and how they're doing it. This is a person, she's got big forces against her. She doesn't know who they are, but she's smart enough to handle it. Now, when you take a long look at this lady's chart, she's got an extremely powerful, this is called a stellium. It's also called a triplicate. Uranus, Venus, Mars. You want to focus on the orb, the degree between the planets. Uranus, Venus are 1 degree apart. Venus, Mars are 6 degrees apart. Whole thing is 7 degrees apart. I use about 9 degrees for my allowances. This is a powerhouse. And this is in the 10th house, a cardinal house. The stuff in this area is very public. Very stuff here, very non-public, very hidden. 1st house is angular. 4th house is very angular. The moon is the most angular planet of the chart. 7th house is empty. So what you do with her, you don't say, hey, it's empty, she'll never get married. You don't do that. What you do is you look to the sign on the cusp. The sign is Aquarius. And you look to the planet that rules that sign. So Uranus in Taurus rules her 7th house. When planets hit that Uranus, things will happen to her 7th house or her mate or to the partnership. Now, it's a lot of stuff to get, but the real good thing about tonight is I'm going to take my time. I'm in no hurry to talk about what Pluto square to Saturn is. Okay? I'm in a hurry to talk about that as opposed to maybe Pluto opposite Saturn or Pluto next to Saturn like we have today. Take a look at where the planets are today. Here's where they are at this moment. Okay? Look at Pluto and Saturn together, 3 degrees apart. And then we'll get more and more worried about this virus coming from the east. Look at Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn. They're all in Capricorn. Here comes Mars. 1, 2, 3, 4 planets are all in Capricorn, and Mars is approaching rapidly. It's going to hit this area around springtime. Here's the sun. It's just gone into Pisces. Mercury and Neptune are starting to split apart. So, you know what you can actually do? I can teach a class and put this on clock. And while we're teaching the class, everything keeps moving. Each minute's being updated. And you'll actually see the moon move from 3:25 to 3:26 in a few minutes. You'll see the ascendant change from 12:29 to 12:30. It just did. And when these things start changing, you'll start to notice the topic of conversation changes. It's no hint, it's no guesswork that my next book is called The Intimate Zodiac. These things are intimately involved in our minds, in the collective mind. And as these things turn, you'll start to see, you ever been at a party and people will say, oh, that's enough of this. Let's go talk about that. It'll just shift, dramatically shift. They're totally in sync with that, only you don't notice because you're not watching the planets. So, what I want to do for you over the next several weeks, I'll probably start doing with your charts. I'm going to show you where your planets are in what signs and what house. I'm going to start to describe to you what it means. And then we'll get to the aspects. And to get us ready for that, let me just give you an example. Oh, that's the wrong one. Okay, here's Pelosi again. Okay, for example, you want to see something interesting? Let's go back. Let's go back to around January 12th when Miss Pelosi was really on the, she was on the stump there, right? With the gavel and all the stuff going on with impeachment, etc. Let's take her chart and let's put the planets on the outer ring, and let's put around January 7th when things got really heated up. Okay, so let me get it to you so you can see it. And you'll start to see how real astrology works. Okay, this is her natal chart. It never changes. It never moves. It's fixed. These are the planets moving in January 7th, 2020. Okay, so you can see Uranus was going over her Saturn. So she was being pressured by Uranus, which is modern thinking, the modern thoughts, crazy thinking, trying to upset her Saturn. And her Saturn is strong as hell in Taurus. This is the house of philosophy. This is what your philosophy is like. And out of the blue, Uranus comes in, and Uranus has been going back and forth over the Saturn all year because you see it's retrograde. It's been going back and forth. And that's why she's been dealing with nutso stuff. And even though she's been trying to hold on to traditions of the house, we've seen a lot of the government dismantled by chaos. And the chaos is not coming from Uranus. The chaos is coming from Aries. Eris is the new one. Eris is the one that's raising hell. The Eris negative side is the Trump cult. So 23 of Aries is moving very, very slowly, and it's at a right angle to Saturn and Pluto. Saturn and Pluto squaring Eris. This is the entire story, what's going on right now. These two, soon to be Jupiter, soon to be Mars, 4 of them will be here, all squared to Eris, and all of them are in her 9th house. So when you are an official like her, and the 9th house represents higher law, when you're an official like her, not only is her mind and philosophy being challenged, but her chart represents all Americans' minds and philosophies. So you can see what's happening. This whole period of dismantling, threatening the Constitution, I'm sure if we had an accurate chart for when the Constitution was signed, we probably could get that. I'm sure that chart's under fire because 1.0 ain't getting it anymore. They did a hell of a job, but we need 2.0 or 5.0 to get around all these lawyers with all their tricks. But you can see. So let's chill out for a minute. In the next several weeks, I'm not in any hurry. I'm going to put several of your charts up. You're going to see your chart. And if you want me to send you your accurate chart, I would be glad to. So you can print it out, etc. Just send me an email message. You will see your planets in the houses and in the signs. And a Mars in one house operates different than Mars in another house. That's what I wanted to show you, and I forgot. Let me take a minute to do that. So, for example, one more time. Her Mars and Venus, she puts out into her work. She puts it into her field of work. She doesn't put it into her field of philosophy. She puts it into her field of work. Her Neptune indicates that she is got very spiritual values, or she's conning everybody. One of the two. That's what Neptune does. The Neptune is opposite Mercury, which we're going to talk about later with aspects. But if her Neptune was in the 3rd or the 2nd or the 1st, it'd be 3 different things. Okay? Look at her sun. Her sun is in the 8th and it's really close to the 9th. So her sun really impacts the 8th and 9th house. So we've got a really terrific chart for someone in her position. It's well designed for her. And also in these charts, you'll see the temptations, like Blagojevich. You'll see the temptations in the chart to go awry, to accept bribes. You'll see them even when they happen. But it's really up to the soul whether she accepts them or not. Okay? You'll see rustling in the crowd when they want to get rid of her. You know? You'll see all that stuff. It's all right here. But anyhow, the planet in the sign and in the house. 3 planets. Here's 4 planets. Look at these. 4 Taurus planets. 3 of them are in the 10th house. 1 is in the 9th house. Okay? So as you start to see these places, you'll understand yourself for the first time in your life. You understand where this came from. Wow, no wonder. Okay? And then near the end of the class, we will take people, because it's not my job to give you a full reading here. And I don't want to get you too embarrassing stuff either. But near the end of the class, we'll talk about when planets came through here. This is why you had a divorce. When planets came through, this is why you changed your job. This is why you got sick. And then I can actually look ahead and see when your next trial period is coming. It's when transiting periods line up with the natal periods. And that's about it. I mean, there are hundreds of other things you could do, but that's the real basis of astrology. So that's why it does not hurt you, and I'm going to keep pressing on you to learn your symbols for the signs and for the planets. And what I gave you tonight, learn at least the nature of the 12 houses. Because all that's left now is doing a bunch of it, and then start talking about one square to one and a third of the way around the circle, a trine. And then I'll start bringing you into the interesting stuff, which is the action when the planets are moving through, what they cause, how much time do they affect, what is their feeling, what is the theoretical way they're being used, what is the real way they're being used. Now, who totally lost their mind tonight? We got a semi hand from Barbara. Mark says he lost his mind. I don't believe him. I think Mark followed me just fine. Did you get the general idea? Did you? How'd you do, Erica? I got you.
I did okay, but I've been studying astrology for 40 years, so I
All
gotta
right.
know a few things.
Ray says not entirely. That's okay, Ray. You don't have to get the gist. You're going to start seeing chart after chart after chart. And that's what's so good about this, because you'll start to see how people's charts are so different. And by the way, here's the charts I look at. I don't look at charts the way you were watching the English system. Here's the system I use. I use what's called the American system. And I've just gotten used to it. Let me show you the difference. You've been using the European 4. And these are all different wheel types. And I've been using, maybe I should use my glasses. That would probably help. Unit 2. Okay, so that's the system I use. So in other words, you no longer see the zodiac. The zodiac is implied. Cancer is in between somewhere here and somewhere here. But now you're seeing the actual clear, crisp 12 houses. That's what these pieces of the pie are revealed. I'm used to this for many years, but I'm going to stay on the other one for a while so you can keep seeing what the zodiac looks like compared to the zodiac plus the houses, Euro 4. See, in this system, you're seeing the zodiac and you're seeing the houses. Okay, so what did we do? We asked the computer to find out where the planets were, to put them on the zodiac, which it did. Then, by the birth time and the birth city, it rotated this chart to how the sky looked actually when she was born. She was born between noon and sunset. Okay? And some people, their planets are all down here, some are all up here. So you did good that you didn't pull your hair out, start throwing things at the screen. We're halfway. Very good. Thank you, YouTubers, for hanging in with us. Hope you're enjoying it. If you have questions, write to me at rick@starself.com. I see you next week. We're going to go into more and more charts, probably some of you guys. We'll just take our time with it because there's no hurry. We've been through the main stuff, and we'll get to aspects when we get to aspects. And the next couple of weeks are when you start going, wow, no wonder. Thank you so much. Hey, take an aspirin at a time. Yeah. Love y'all. See you next week. Thank you, YouTubers. See you next week. I'll stop the recording. I'll load it in the next area.